All right. So for everyone who is here, a couple of things to get started. Go to the upper right-hand corner where you have either gallery view or speaker view. Put it on speaker view. That way you'll hear whoever's talking at the time. And then just stay on mute until we get to a question and answer part. We'll pause a couple of times throughout the talk to have a question and answer. You can write your questions in the chat, but when it comes time for questions, I will unmute you and ask you to speak out your question. That way you can talk directly to Adalyde or myself, or whoever you want to talk to. Hey, Miss. And there's my dog.
I forgot he was back there. It startled me.
All right, so let's go ahead and just get started. I wanted to say that we're here in these plague times and we don't get to see each other often. And I thought it'd be fun to start interviewing some people who are known for some pretty awesome things here in the SCA and in Calontir when it comes to arts and sciences or services or just being part of this community and bringing it together. So Adalyde was talking with me when I had this light bulb go off on my head, and she gratefully agreed to be my guinea pig and be here for my debut, and it's pretty awesome. So it's basically just an interview, and if you have questions, go ahead and write them in the chat, and when we get to question and answer time, I'll unmute you and you can read your question. All right, so this is Chatting with Catalina, and welcome to my Majlis. A Majlis is a social setting area where we talk about arts, sciences, the SCA, Calontir Culture, service, and why we are here. Each week during plague times, I invite each of you to join me and a special guest as we discuss what brings joy to the SCA in the worlds of arts and science and service. So today we have the beautiful Adalyde, and her name is Her Ladyship Adalyde la Cantora. Adalyde, what's the rest of that?
The middle name is Heloyz, Heloyz. I don't know why I'm leaning forward yelling at you. I'm pretty sure you can hear me just fine.
I can hear you. Give me a second. I forgot I was going to share this to my group.
That's okay.
Page you manage. Haha. Next. And we're going to prepare to live stream this real quick.
Sounds good. No, Drix, I didn't get a wheel to run on.
She went straight upstairs. I haven't seen her since.
Perfect. Perfect. Now I need to get back here. All right. So we're with Her Ladyship Heloyz la Cantora. Esther, can you put yourself on mute and go up to
Yes,
speaker view in the upper right-hand corner? Go to speaker view. That way you see who's speaking. So where in the known world did you start playing in the SCA?
I started in Barony of Three Rivers, which is in St. Louis.
And how old were you?
I was 8 years old when my parents decided to go ahead and join the SCA. And it was about when I was 9 that I actually started participating a little bit more.
What did you think of the SCA when you were 9?
I thought it was awesome. It was loud and there were guys hitting each other with sticks and there were beautiful clothing and the food was really weird, and I wasn't that adventurous with the food when I was younger, but it was just really magical to me to be able to kind of escape from the rest of the world and throw on my clothes and funny and weird for a weekend.
Right. Have you lived in any other kingdoms or any other cities?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, actually, at this point, I lived in Barony Forgotten Sea, which is Kansas City. And then I lived in Barony of Alberon a few years ago, which is Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Kingdom of Atlantis.
Tried a different kingdom for a little while. That's
I
brave.
It was not the same.
Yeah, nothing's like home. So you are known in Calontir and really throughout the known world for singing and songwriting. Um, who was the first person who inspired you to sing?
You know, it happened so long ago that I don't think there is any one person that really inspired me, but I would have to say the staples of the Bardic Circle from 24, 25 years ago, you know, Drixos, Fernando, Eric, Pavel, Marcus, and there were other people that came and visited from other kingdoms and people who kind of came and went throughout the society, but they were probably the original people who inspired me to really start singing.
What songs do you remember from those times? Like, is there one in particular that always was your background song in your head?
Oh, no, it was,
just the whole jukebox, right?
Yes, exactly. Every now and then I would kind of like something new would pop in my head. Raven Banner, I take that back. Raven Banner was in my head a lot growing up.
Okay.
And
that's a good one.
Yeah, and oh, what's the actual name of it? The Raised as a Warrior.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, that was.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, you're still writing songs now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
So right now I want to pause for any questions about Adalyde's early life in the SCA, and then we'll move into a little bit more about how she goes about writing her songs and stuff like that. So does anybody have any questions about Adalyde's growing up in the SCA?
It was not very exciting growing up.
Right?
It got more exciting as an adult.
So how did you settle on your persona?
So it took me quite a long time to get where I am with my persona. It started out with my name, just opened a book of names and found a name that I liked and landed on Adalyde, and it's kind of developed and grown throughout the years. And just like anybody else in the SCA, you grow and you discover yourself. And within the last couple of years, I landed on Spanish persona, and fortunately found an period example of Adalyde, spelled differently than everybody's used to. But yeah, now I'm Spanish. Started as Scottish and then went on to Middle Eastern-ish. And
so what was your Scottish name?
It was Adalyde McGillivray.
And your Middle Eastern name?
Was Adalyde Alsarca Bentianos, which is Adalyde, blue-eyed daughter of Janos.
So Evan just asked a question that is actually pretty relevant to this portion of the conversation. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Evan, and ask your question.
Okay, so I'm actually like really new to the whole SCA sort of community and sort of stuff like that. I joined the group like back in like March. It was almost like literally like right before the whole entire like virus thing happened. So
oh no,
I haven't really had a good chance. Like I originally was gonna have my chance like to get into it, like really get into the group during like the Renaissance Fair that was coming up in Omaha and like in Bellevue. But that all got canceled, and it's like I guess my main question is like, how do you like really how do you sort of get into this sort of like, you know, like how did you get into like this sort of like community of like, you know, getting that sort of like community of friends and sort of stuff like that? And it's like getting comfortable with the sort of personas and sort of stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that really it's one of those things that when you start trying things, you will meet such an enormous variety of people who know so much stuff and can teach you so many things. And throughout that process of learning and trying new stuff, you start to develop relationships with people, and you start to, what starts as, hey, can you show me how to do this thing, down the road turns into, you know, hey, we're camping over here, do you want to camp next to us? Or hey, do you want to, let's go to post travel together? Or, you know, staying in touch with one another. It's kind of, I think that's probably the best way I can think to explain it, is that you just kind of, as you start to go in, the rest of the world just kind of develops around you. And definitely trying new things, and yeah, try new things and introduce yourself, yes, around, and like coming to stuff like this where, you know, people can start to see your face and you get to learn things and join in the conversation. And then, you know, 3, 6, 9 months from now, people start to see you at events and be able to go, hey, Seven, or whatever name you pick for them, if you pick.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
I hope that
Oh yeah, no, I think it definitely helps a lot.
okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. So everyone knows you for your singing and songwriting. Tell us what piqued your interest in songwriting.
So I don't remember how old I was, but it was Lily's. I was very young, and I was falling asleep, and I remember just hearing the singing from up the hill at the corner at Fordlandia, and the voices just coming down the hill. It was just, it gave me goosebumps. It still gives me goosebumps talking about it, and thinking about it. And that was what started out as my lullaby turned into an inspiration of, I want to be part of that lullaby. I want to be one of those voices that people fall asleep to, that people sing along with as they march to the battlefield.
Right. I couldn't tell you how many people find that lullaby just so comforting, because you go to bed at night and you know the party's still going on out there. They're still singing, they're still laughing, there's still shenanigans and pony rides happening. But falling asleep to that lullaby is, even though it's sometimes an interesting key, it's pretty fun. What was your first goal in singing?
So my first goal, and I actually wrote it in my documentation of my first ANS entry, which was Drums of War. One of the lines was, at the time, I wanted something people would walk away humming and be able to sing along with at bardic circles and fires. And fast forward to 15 years later, at least, over probably, people are singing along, and it was goal accomplished.
Right,
And
you definitely accomplished that goal.
And Drums of War was really, I had been to Gulf Wars, or had heard of Gulf Wars and seen people walking to the battlefield at Lily's, and heard the stories of people singing as they marched to the battlefield together. And when I wrote drums, that was kind of another thing of, I want my song to be able to be sung as the march, as the army.
So what inspired you? Like, how did you get started writing Drums of War?
I wanted a song that everybody could relate to. And I was inspired by fighting, putting on armor, and the rush of adrenaline that you got, and the camaraderie that existed. And I wasn't really looking to write something period so much as something SCA. And so I wasn't really worried about doing a whole lot of research so much as just wanting to have that connection that people have in that song.
So when you say something that you just wanted something SCA, not really something period, can you explain the difference?
Yes. So, and I have to preface this that with my attitude and view has changed since I was 16. But at the time, period music, that wasn't what you really heard when you were walking around at events or sites, the singing, you know, at events you would hear the instruments playing, which was beautiful, but I never felt that rush to sing with period songs as you do with Calontir songs, with SCA songs. You want to join in, you know, you have 50 people standing together, singing together, and I didn't feel like writing a song could accomplish that.
Right. So tell us about, other than Drums of War, do you have any of your first pieces that you wrote or any stories about them?
Yeah, so I have a couple. I actually have the original lyrics to Tonight and the Saracen song. These are old, wrinkly, folded up pieces of paper from when I was like 16, 17. So I still have those lyrics. And then I also, I still have the sheet music and ANS entry of a second song that I wrote that was only sung twice. And I never really sang it after that. And I've actually come to find recently that there's a handful of people who actually really enjoyed it.
Which song is that?
It's called He's Riding the Waves Back to Me. It's very slow, but it was inspired by the thought of a woman waiting for her love who has gone off to war, and she's waiting by the seashore and dies a lonely, terrible death. Which is very Calontir-y.
It is, it is. Is this one of your first period songs that you wrote?
I would say that it's pretty darn close to period, based on the rhyming scheme and how it's written with a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus. The theme is very period of losing a love and the broken heart. So yeah, I would say that this is probably a very period piece, and was not my intention to be period, but looking back at it now, it's actually period.
Well, from what we've talked about before, the rhyme schemes are pretty simple most of the time. You know, you go,
Yeah.
you have your patterns and.
Yep, absolutely. And the great thing about period music is that while looking at it, and you know, you listen to the sound and the lyrics and the words, and it's very different from what it was, you know, in the 1500s, 1000s. But I'm so sorry, I'm so scatterbrained right now. But on paper, when you look at the theme of the music and the rhyming schemes and all of that, they're very similar of, you know, not a lot of rhyming patterns have changed over the years, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Did you want to share a small portion of that song with us, or?
Yeah, sure.
That would be wonderful. I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. It's a bit long, so I'll just sing a chunk of it for you. There's a young girl who waits by the seashore with a longing in her eyes. Don't let go, she says, he's almost home, she says. He's riding the waves back to me. Out to war, he's gone to fight men, he's gone, but he'll be home quite soon. Don't let go, she says, he's almost home. She says, he's riding the waves back to me. For young girl, she waits, long lost soul, she waits, never knowing if he is alive. Don't let go, she says, he's almost home. She says, he's riding the waves back to me. And then she dies and there's a spirit and everything.
Oh, that's Calontir if I ever heard it.
Right.
Beautiful. You wrote that when you were 16?
I did.
You're so talented.
It's funny as I realized as I was singing it, was like, this kind of sounds like a Disney song. The melody.
It maybe had a little bit of that princess feel to it. But
It did. I was singing, I was like, oh, okay.
That's okay. That's okay. So tell me, from writing that song, what did you learn at that time from writing that song?
I would say at the time, after singing it, 2 or 3 times, I realized that I wasn't really happy with singing it. I wanted something that was more upbeat, and I felt kind of dirgy. I guess is a good word, expressive word.
That's okay.
But looking back at it where I am now, I feel that that song would be better received than I think it would be.
Okay. So I wanted to take a moment again to pause for questions. We have quite a few people who have just joined us. So quickly I'll go over the what we're doing here. In the upper right-hand corner, if you put it on speaker view, whoever's speaking will be the person you see. And keep yourself on mute. If you have a question, you're welcome to put it into the chat. And when we get to question time, I will open it up. I will let you on mute so that you can ask your question yourself. So Tiffany said that was beautiful. And Andrixos is pretty happy that attitudes have changed since you were 16. But does anybody else have any questions? You can unmute yourself if you do.
Hello, Adalyde. Andrixos here.
Hi.
My video's not working, so there you go. And Fiona's with us too.
Hi, Fiona.
Hey.
One of the things I noticed as you were singing, the key, the structure, just the whole thing, even had it not been you singing that, my ear would have probably directly attributed. I'll bet that Adalyde wrote that song. And I have not had formal music training since high school band, and so all of my stuff seems to follow a similar key pattern and type of progression of melodies, and I had never really thought of it, in terms of you or anyone else, but that one fit in with all of the other things that you've written. Do you have formal, what level of formal musical and musicological training have you had, or is it just like me, something you've picked up by ear around the campfire over however many years?
Sure. So I actually grew up in the musical theater community. My mom is a professional actress, and I grew up singing. So I actually had been singing for a really long time before starting singing in the SCA. I'd never written my own songs and performed them. I'd only ever, sung what came on a script or on prior music. But Yeah, I'd had a very strong musical background before starting to sing in the SCA. And I had a little bit of band in there and a few years of vocal lessons. So I already kind of had the ear for it.
And I guess the part of it I want to emphasize, the more formal music theory stuff. I mean, can you talk your way through a minor seventh diminished chord? And I'm not even sure that exists.
Not to save my life.
Good.
Music theory is very much like math to me. My brain does not do it. I can't. I cannot music theory to save my life. I can pull out some sheet music and I know where C is. And I can like find the notes on the piano if I need to, but being able to recognize what key I'm in, you know, what dissonance, sharps and flats, and
I think that's very similar to the difference between costumers, the person who's the draper and the person who measures out all the patterns. So it's a very artistic way of going about making music as compared to the mathematic way of making music, the scientific way.
Yes. And anytime I've entered a song in an A&S competition, I've had to have sheet music. And as somebody who doesn't know how to do that, it was a good challenge.
You can always work with somebody else to make that happen.
Exactly.
And at this moment, I will take time to endorse Catalina Upton-Dyke, the music scrivener for Calontir, and who will preserve our songs for our great-grandchildren.
Yes. Absolutely.
Everyone loves Catriana's songbook.
Yes.
All right, any other questions from anybody before we move on? All right. So here's the question that I have. Of all of your songs, do you have one that you think is your best? Do you have a favorite? Are they the same song? Are they two different songs?
So I actually have a few for different reasons. I would have to say that probably as far as, let me back up. So Stand Beside Me, I just wrote within the last few years, actually within a few months of coming home back to Calontir from the Outlands. And that one I just absolutely love because it's quick and easy to learn. It's something everybody can sing along to. It's something that everybody enjoys singing and feels involved in and connected to. And I have to say, John, I see you on here. I am grateful that John added on a final verse onto that included other people of the kingdom and not just the fighters, which you need to learn that verse and get that from you, John. But that one I would say is probably my favorite as far as crowd rousing, getting them together. But probably my favorite one of my other favorites is Tonight. It's a song that I wrote when I was 17 and I only performed it a couple times, and it was another one that I thought, this is too slow, people aren't going to enjoy singing this or listening to it. And then, so I tucked it away. And then just a few years ago, came across the lyrics and brought it out. And I remember singing it for the first time at a post revel. And the room felt quiet. And I just saw out of the corner of my eye, people were touched and getting emotional from it and really invested in it, listening. And that's what you aim for when you write music. You want people to feel that they can relate. You want to be able to make those emotions come forward. So I would probably say that Tonight would be one of my more favorite ones to do.
So when you wrote tonight, did you do any research to write it? How did it come to you? Like, where did it come from?
So my inspiration always comes from these daydream ideas of stories that just kind of play out in my head, and these images, and from those I kind of pick out these little things and put it together. For tonight, I don't remember what the exact inspiration was, but I can remember very clearly the image and the story in my head was a soldier who had to leave and sail away for war and leave his loved one behind, hoping that she was waiting for him, and finding the hope for himself in keeping that hope that somebody is at home waiting for him.
So you said you started writing songs when you were 16, and you wrote this one when you were 17.
Yes.
So you wrote your favorite song a year into your writing career?
I did. And the Saracen song, which I didn't sing for a very long time, I also wrote when I was 17 or 18. And then that one was another one that got tucked away, mostly because I hadn't finished it and I couldn't get it to where I wanted it. And then it wasn't until my early mid-20s that I kind of figured it out and stapled it down. But
so that one took you a little longer to put together and make it what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, I have a lot of songs like that. And I suspect that there are a lot of people out there who write their own music that have those songs that start with something, or they get halfway through, or they have this idea that they just, man, they like, you got this idea and it's right there, but the words, the melody, the full story of it just doesn't come. So yeah, there's songs that you start and you just kind of tuck away, and sometimes you come back to it in a few weeks or a few months, and sometimes it's several years. Excuse me while I let the dog out. Okay, sorry.
Okay. So how long did it take you to perfect Tonight to be what you wanted it to be?
I think after finding the lyrics again after several years, and fortunately, I wrote down the chords of the song, so I was able to go back and try and figure it out and make it work. But I think that time took me about half an hour of picking it up, figuring it out on guitar, and getting it to a point where I felt like I could come back and repeat it comfortably and enjoyed it.
Did you want to share that one with us today?
Yeah. Ooh, sorry. Tonight I am praying to the stars, hoping my love does the same. It's been 5 years since I've seen your pretty face, deserts and oceans away. I'd have the crops are coming in this time of year, and the trees are in full bloom. And I just hope that she's holding on still, waiting for me to come home, waiting for me to come home. Tonight I am counting the stars, making constellations of my own. I look upon my brothers who have all lost their faith, haters, lost souls, and alone. I'd hoped to have a farm and a family by now, mountain babes of my own. baby girl on my knee, and a few sons or three, all waiting for me to come home, waiting for me to come home. Tonight the stars are ablaze as fire rains down from the sky. For to stand brave, swore to fight to the grave, and we fear we won't make it alive. I hear the soldiers whisper, I hear my brothers pray. Some from the Bible and some from the heart, and some sing the songs that their forefathers bear, hoping that they'll make it home. We're hoping we'll all make it home. Tonight I am praying to the stars, hoping my love does the same. It's been 10 years since I've seen her pretty face. She's deserts and oceans away. She's deserts and oceans away. She's deserts and oceans away.
Yay! I really love that song. I find it incredible that you had this buried in a pile of papers for 15 years before you brought it back out.
Yeah.
So, in writing songs, what tools would you recommend to others if they wanted to become a songwriter?
So there are a few things that I think are staples to have with you for starting songwriting. I think one of the most important ones is having either a voice recorder. Most phones have them nowadays, unless they're getting a dinky flip phone like my dad, but that's another story. But having a voice recorder or having paper and a writing utensil of some sort, so that when you get those ideas of, oh man, I really like this melody, but I'm in the car and like, okay, or I'm in like Target or something, so you make a quick recording, or man, these lyrics, like I just came up with this great verse or chorus or something, or this idea that I don't want to lose, and being able to record that and have it with you so you can go back to it later. I can't tell you how many songs I've lost because I'm in the shower, and granted, there's not a lot you can do when you're in the shower, but you know, in the car, or even I've been at events and stuff, like in the middle of something and unable to write it down, and like, oh man, that's a great idea, and then gone. So,
right, I mean, you have your helmet on, you're swinging your sword in the middle of a battle. I've got a song, but it's gone by the time you get back to camp.
exactly, yes. You're like, what was it? But having those are great places to start for being able to get your ideas down so you don't lose them. Another thing that I would recommend as the next step is having books that help you along the way. So for example, cover by paper. So this is a modern, mundane, printed in 1985, but it is a great book. It's just a basic songwriting 101. It is literally called A Complete Guide to the Craft of Songwriting. And it talks about lyrics, music, rhythm, rhyme, notation, concept, form, style. And even though it's discussing modern music, like I said earlier, rhyming schemes and form really haven't changed that much over the years. So that's a great handy thing to have. As far as getting into the period music, having other books that give you good examples of the words and the music itself. So like I have, this is an English medieval and Renaissance songbook, and it just has that has like the sheet music and the lyrics for tons of songs. So and there's like four part songs in here and duets and tons of stuff. I've stolen from my high school English lit teacher is a book that discusses specifically medieval English literature. And this talks about stories and everything like Old English poetry and, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. But what I love is that it talks about, it gives you kind of the modern English word for what the medieval word was. So for, where is it? There's a word in here, I'm not even gonna try and pronounce these words, but the particular word is parfait, and it means perfect. Another one is proposing, or I don't know how you say that, but intending, and traita is third, and so it goes on and on about that. But having something along those lines where you can go back and be able to do your research, and also knowing when you go into writing a song, am I trying to write an SCA style song that isn't necessarily period, but you know, a few years down the line, everybody may be able to sing along to it? Are you looking for something that is period and maybe you want to share, but you need to start with documentation and research instead of the other way?
Write it first.
Listen, let me tell you about the hardships of writing a song before you do the research and then going back and trying to figure out how to document it. I don't recommend it. It's happened so many times. I don't recommend it.
All right. So what would you tell someone who is just getting started? What would you tell young 15, 16-year-old Adelaide about this journey?
Do not be afraid. Get up there and sing that song that you think nobody's going to like. Because sometimes those songs that you think nobody is going to like is what everybody is singing along to, or crying to, or clapping their hands to, or just really enjoying by the end of it. You know, have faith in your audience, I think would be kind of the big thing I would tell young Adelaide.
All right, so I have one question left, but before I get to that, does anyone have any questions right now? You can unmute yourself.
Could you provide the titles of those books that you mentioned? You know, perhaps typing them in at some point so that we can all steal from your library, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it would be easier to type those titles into the chat here, or if it'd be easier to provide.
So Adelaide, after we're done, I'm actually live feeding this to Facebook right now.
Oh,
and
perfect.
I'll have a link for it later, and we can put, you can help me figure out who those books are from, and we can put the links to them in at that time.
Sounds good.
Show notes, right?
Yeah, right.
Any other questions? All right, so I want to end each of these that I do with a little bit of with a medieval magical moment, or a magical moment. And the thing is we all of us who have been in the SCA for years and years and years, we have some sort of magic that keeps us coming back, that gives us joy when we're tired, that helps keep that dreaded burnout at bay. And can you share with us what your magical SCA moment is?
Yeah, so for a really, really long time, my magical moment was the first time I sang around the Bardic Fire at Heloyz when I was 16. And Pavel those were the days where Pavel was the MC. And, you know, you told him it was just like karaoke. And all right, I'll let you, you're after so-and-so, and he'd come and let you know. And I told him I wanted to sing, and I got a very skeptical look from him. That okay. And because here's this little dweeby 16-year-old girl nobody's ever like, all right, she's gonna be quiet. And I opened my mouth and the group went silent. And that for really time was the magical moment for me. That was in my early mid-20s, surpassed by Golf Wars, where Volgamut came and played in Calontir. And I remember I was sitting next to Fernando, and I leaned over to him and I said, can you imagine how awesome it would be for Volgamut to play backup drums to Drums of War? And he told me, go ask him. That's Volgamut. I'm not gonna go up to him and be like, hey, can you just play backup for me on this song so I can be like cool and stuff? Like, I'm not doing that. And so Fernando went up and talked to them, and I looked at them and I got the same skeptical look from them. And I came up and I started singing, and there was just, I mean, I have goosebumps remembering and talking about it, having Volgamut play backup for you while you're singing Drums of War, like, it was awesome. It was so awesome. That is by far my magical SCA moment. And that is when things are hard, when I'm struggling to sing, to write, to just struggling in general, I think back to singing with Volgamut, and man, that gives me a little recharge to keep going.
Well, that was a magical moment for everyone who was there.
It was pretty cool.
So I'm glad. Thank you so much for joining me today, for being willing to chat about your life's work, basically. And I love you. So
Me too. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
It is. I like it. I like it. So for everyone who joined us today, every week through plague times until, either we start to see each other again, or I don't know, maybe I get tired of it, but it's pretty fun. We'll be having a chatting with Catalina. You'll be sitting with me, and we'll have some questions about somebody's career, something that they're known for, and we'll have time for questions and answers. And it'll be Saturdays at 4 p.m. unless that starts to conflict with something. But thank you guys for joining me today.
Thank you.
Next week is going to be Mistress Rionwin. She is a laurel, a pelican, an oath, but what we're going to talk about is her. She's also a saint, But we're going to talk about is her tent making and her journey in the SCA with that art. So, and then the week after that, we'll talk to Grimwolf about repoussé and teaching, and then the week after that, we're going to talk to Marie about her journey with pottery. So, about mid-month, I'll start scheduling out July, just to see how that goes. If you have ideas or something you would like to hear talked about, or somebody you can't actually bring yourself to talk to and you want me to talk to them, drop me a line, give me a private message, send me an email, find me on Facebook, and I will see what I can do about lining them up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.